Hey, everybody. Welcome to my talk, Product Leadership Starts From Within. My name is Christine Yoon, and so grateful that you're able to join me today. A little bit about myself. I'm currently a senior product manager at Help Scout. My pronouns are she, her. Help Scout is a customer service software platform with the mission to empower businesses with tools that serve people in the most human, helpful way. Prior to that, I was at a company called HubSpot, as well as Boston Globe Media Partners. So I've worked on a very wide range of problems and opportunities over the course of almost a decade. A little bit more about myself. So I'm a first generation Korean American based in the greater Boston area. To restore and rediscover, I love traveling. I just got back from Ireland with my partner. I love evolving my sneaker collection. You might get a little sneak peek behind me. I'm a bit of a sneakerhead. And if I'm being completely honest, I just love resting and doing nothing because that's how I recharge my batteries. And there's so much power and privilege in that. So when I first saw that this year's theme was restore and rediscover, I'm not going to lie, my eyes and ears kind of perked up. Now, I've been in this field for a long time, and it didn't click with me until recent years that, we focus so much in this space about influencing others and external outcomes. And it's been so easy to lose sight and about how we check in with ourselves, right? So I saw this quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. He is a Vietnamese Buddhist monk and peace activist. And I saw it right around the time that the call for submissions for this conference came out. And I saw this quote, it was right around the time that he passed, actually. So, some synchronicities were happening. And I was like, I had a kind of moment, right? Because this quote captures so well the spirit of how creating the biggest impact around us and true growth really begins with our inner selves. So I felt compared to share with folks in the products community what I've learned and experienced through a lens that specifically centers women in product of the global majority, women of color, to help give some encouragement and reframe what great product leadership looks like at every career level. Because whether you're an associate product manager, you're a senior product manager, or you're a VP of product, you have a team that looks to you for guidance, support, and direction. You are a leader, and your job is to invest in your team to create the best possible outcomes for your customers. So our jobs are entirely relational, right? Without other people to engage in and collaborate with, our jobs are irrelevant. So I'll be talking about how we can unlock ourselves to create outcomes that get you closer to where you want to go as a product person. So I want to start off by acknowledging some of the characteristics of product management. In so many ways, there's so many signals. We've received feedback, we've read in the blogs, we've read in books, that we need to embody these things, right? Be confident, and then you'll sell your vision. Be empathetic towards your customers. Foster vulnerability to improve your team's psychological safety, right? Make bold decisions in your product. I'm curious, as you're looking at this list, and this is a question for the audience right now, what else is missing? What else have you thought of as embodying product leadership? Please, drop your thoughts and reflections directly in the chat. I'm really curious to see what you have to say. And even if it's something that you've heard that you don't necessarily agree with, right? That you've heard over the years. But what else is missing from this list? Awesome. So, of course, we want to embody these characteristics, but it's not so simple to just be authentic. Otherwise, we probably would have done this by now, right? There's a big disconnect here for so many of us. So how do we become more authentic? What is the first step towards truly becoming vulnerable? Now, this is another question for the audience. Raise your hand or put in the chat, please. If you've ever thought, if I could only embody these characteristics, I'd feel I would look, more like a product leader. Who's ever thought this way? So I'm here to tell you today that society makes us seem like we need to be this way as an input rather than an output. And there's one incredibly important input that isn't talked about enough, and it's something that underpins all of this. And that is self-compassion. Practicing self-compassion is a prerequisite to product leadership. And I'm going to dive deeper into the ways that research backs that self-compassion is one of the main drivers behind how we show up with our teams, our colleagues, and our communities. And how this then creates ripple effects that ungate us to getting to know ourselves better and maybe even to rediscover what we're all about. It can encourage us to make small shifts in how we lead, how we show up, how we progress in our careers, and, how we might end up advocating for ourselves to get that promotion or to finally leave that toxic culture or to make even the smallest shift to take yourself off of mute to speak your mind. So, self-compassion, it's becoming a bit of a buzzword these days, but what is it really? And in its simplest form, it's about talking to yourself as you would a good friend during a difficult situation. Now, if you were to close this laptop and walk away today, and this is the one thing that you took away from this, I'd be very happy. And we're going to dive into the different aspects of it. But, there is a ton of research out there and some specific research actually, to give an example, that on soldiers returning from war with PTSD. And it has shown that practicing self-compassion in that they're less likely to have symptoms of PTSD. It's also making its way into sports psychology, and has shown that athletes that practice higher degrees of self-compassion have greater levels of personal growth, body appreciation, greater sense of purpose in life, and lower fear of failure. So if you've ever seen watch the show Ted Lasso, you'll see a little bit of the self-compassion principles in that show. So I have a story for you that's kind of going to exemplify a lot of this. So several years ago, I was out to coffee with my manager at the time. She remains one of my greatest mentors till this day. And I was looking to find some connection with her about my fear of failure, my fear of speaking in front of large groups of people, which is kind of ironic because here I am now. But she gave me some advice that really stuck with me. And it's that if you are giving a presentation or a speech and you forget a line or you mess up, the audience doesn't know that. So it's all good. And you did your best, right? And I really appreciated that advice and that encouragement. And it's something that really stuck with me. Some time went by and we were in our one-on-one, and she had just gotten out of a large product presentation. There were a bunch of other product leaders in the room, and she was kind of beating herself up a little bit. She mentioned she fumbled through some slides. Maybe she left out a critical piece of information. And I told her, I was like, you told me if you forget a line or you mess up, the audience likely doesn't know that. So, you did your best. It's all good. And once I said that, I saw her energy shift, and she said, oh yeah, I should take my own advice. And that's kind of what self-compassion is all about. So to give a little bit of context around self-compassion, it's not a new concept. It's been around for thousands of years. It has origins within Buddhism and from Eastern Asia. And researchers and psychologists, Kristen Neff and Chris Germer, really took that and performed a lot of research, published a lot of evidence around how it can really underpin a lot of the suffering that we feel, and how it can really help us grow as individuals and get to know ourselves better. And they've created some amazing coursework and evidence-based coursework that's now taught around the world called Mindful Self-Compassion. And I actually took this course in the spring of 2020, and it completely shifted the way I relate to myself, how I engage with my teams and colleagues. When I'm feeling down, it gave me some tools to help feel a little bit more resilient and feel a little bit more supported in how I was feeling. And so I'll be sharing with you today a lot of what I learned through this coursework, what I've practiced, and how practicing self-compassion directly impacts how we lead in product management. So I also want to talk about what self-compassion is not. You know, some people might think of self-compassion as self-pity or weakness, but it's actually the opposite because it provides some perspective rather than just zeroing in and focusing on our own distress and spiraling in a bunch of different ways. It does encourage us to look inward and build more sustainable habits as opposed to focusing on external drivers that might cause longer term harm. I also want to dispel this myth that pressure creates diamonds. I don't know if y'all have ever heard this, but you know, coming from my own background in athletics, you know, I've definitely been conditioned to think this way. I also think that, you know, grind and like hustle culture has been glorified for way, way too long. And long term, this actually leads to higher fear of failure. You know, it leads to burnout. And we've all seen the effects of what burnout can have on ourselves and our family and the ripple effects of those, right? And, you know, so this short term thinking definitely causes longer lasting scars. So I'm going to dig into the different aspects of self compassion. The first one is mindfulness, practicing the skills to name things. And it really is a skill. The second aspect is self compassion, noticing that you're not alone and reminding yourself of that. And then the third aspect is self kindness, cultivating a compassionate voice towards ourselves. And again, I'm going to double click into each one of these aspects. But these are the three that I'm going to kind of carry throughout this framework. So I want to pause for a second and I want to check in with the audience. And I want to ask you, you know, how are you feeling in this moment? Now, what you see in front of you is something called the feelings wheel. You'll see a bunch of different feelings kind of mapped out and color coded. And I would love to hear from the audience, and please drop this in the chat, how you're feeling. Pick a feeling from this feeling wheel, kind of check in with yourself and really, really take a moment to check in. If you want to, you know, drop an emoji about how you're feeling too, even better. But please, yeah, take a second. And it can also be about how you're literally physically feeling in the moment. Are you feeling tired? Do you feel your feet on the ground? Do you feel your butt in your seat? So I'm going to give y'all a few seconds and just check in with yourself, check in with your body, and please share how you're feeling in the chat. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling my feet on the ground, feeling nervous. All right. So what is the significance of what we just did? So you just practiced mindfulness, like in those past 30 seconds. So what is the significance of mindfulness, right? And what it is essentially boiled down is naming, literally putting a word and assigning it to how you're feeling. And it can be how you're feeling inside. It can be about how you're feeling in your body. But this has an amazing impact. You know, as product managers, I joke because like we're always looking for the low level of effort, high impact thing to prioritize, right? And having a quick practice of mindfulness can really be a game changer because especially when you're exhibiting more difficult emotions, right? When you're suffering and you're feeling down, naming can actually lessen the charge of that. Naming it actually takes the power back from your body or from what you're feeling. So there's actually this quote that really drives us home, which is, if you can name it, you can tame it. And the ripple effect is that it really helps you, especially after you've maybe experienced a microaggression, right? Or something really didn't go your way. It helps you respond rather than react. You know, for example, when we're called on a meeting and you're feeling really flustered, right? taking that extra breath and taking our time can really be the difference in responding from a grounded place rather than reacting. And my favorite part about this is that it can really help break up the rumination cycle. So when I say rumination, and some folks might not be as familiar with this phrase, but have you ever laid in bed at like midnight and you just keep replaying over and over something bad that happened earlier in the day? Or maybe somebody said something that just didn't sit well with you, or it made you just feel really bad. That cycle, right, is called rumination. And it can even be about forward thinking things, right? About, you're trying to prepare and protect yourself from something that might go wrong. So maybe you're replaying all these scenarios and over and over and over again, and it just keeps you up and consumes you. That's what rumination is called. And actually checking in with yourself and practicing mindfulness kind of takes the focus off of what's happening in your head and puts you into your body a little bit more. And it can be a really powerful tool for breaking up the cycle. I'm not going to lie, I was ruminating a lot about this presentation, and it was just a really nice practice for me to just sit in my body and try to kind of break that rumination cycle that we all, fall in. It's a human thing. So the second aspect is called common humanity. And now this is very important, and I can't stress this enough. This is very important for folks that hold marginalized identities. This is for anybody that's looked around the room and has not seen anybody else that looks or sounds like them. If you've ever felt like you don't fit in, and if you've ever felt like, you have to assimilate to the dominant, AKA white male culture, like you can't truly be yourself. This slide is all about accepting yourself and also understanding that, uncertainty, fear, and doubt, these difficult feelings are part of being human. They're, it is a universal feeling. And I will say, bias and exclusion exacerbate these feelings. Okay. I'm taking this directly from a Harvard Business Review article called "Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome." I'll include it in the resources after this. It'll be included in the materials, but it was researched and written by Ruchika Tulshan and Jodi Anbury. And when I read this, it completely shifted the way I think about things. And this article and research serves as a reminder that difficult feelings, when you are feeling imposter syndrome, it's not a syndrome. Feelings of doubt and fear and self-doubt, this doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, right? But rather it's a part of a greater system that is designed to keep white male folks in power. So, just understanding and going back to mindfulness, acknowledging this can lessen the charge of what we're feeling, takes us out of that feeling of isolation, and encourages us to find connection for it. This Women in Product Conference is a perfect example of that, right? An amazing group of diverse women coming together, sharing our experiences can really help us understand, like, wow, I'm not the only person that feels this way. And that's a really powerful feeling. So again, it really brings us a little bit more into feeling a sense of community, and to get connection for how you're feeling. It helps us, unblock that feeling of, being paralyzed by having to achieve perfection. And, I can understand why we try to achieve a feeling of perfection, because it helps us feel safe, right? If this is perfect, I can't be criticized, or, I won't be shut down. But, perfectionism does not exist. And just remembering this can just help you kind of become unblocked. And then the third aspect of this is self-kindness. It's really about cultivating that compassionate voice towards ourselves. It is like a good coach that motivates. It's that Ted Lasso voice coming through, right? But it's for ourselves. And we can really encourage ourselves and thus our teams to take more risks, right? It actually does lead to less fear of failure, because that there's a little bit of a safety cushion behind you. It helps you, make a gut call. Maybe you're up against a go or no go decision on a product rollout. Deciding to pursue one strategy over another, even if you don't have all the information, it really just helps us keeps us from having that freeze response that holds us back a little bit. And a lot of these things, these ripple effects that I outline here as a result of, kinder self-talk, and when we recognize that self-critic come out, these are all signs of they roll up to being vulnerable, right? I'm actually a huge fan of Brené Brown, and her research and a lot of what she's putting out there tells us that vulnerability is courage. Vulnerability is courageous leadership. And so a lot of these things roll up to just embodying more brave leadership. So what I just talked through is a lot. I'm actually going to practice self-compassion myself and take a sip of water. And take a deep breath. Okay. Because now we're going to put it all together. I know that was a lot of stuff I just threw at you, but let's put this into practice. So let's say you had a really difficult strategic roadmap conversation with a very demanding stakeholder. You're feeling super deflated. Maybe you're even feeling like, dang, like maybe I'm not the right person for this job, or, questioned whether or not product management is even for you. I mean, I've definitely felt that a few times in my career. So the first step is practicing mindfulness, naming and labeling your feelings. Now, for the audience, I'm curious as I'm outlining this story for you, and I know you've all felt this way in one way or another. How are you feeling? How would you feel in this moment? Please share in the chat. Maybe you'd be feeling angry, sad. The second step is around common humanity and recognizing that you're not alone. I've said a couple times, like something like this, it happens, unfortunately, in our practice, right? There are demanding stakeholders, and we're not alone in feeling this way, right? How can I remind myself that what I'm going through is a part of a larger human experience, especially within product management? So write in the chat any other reflections that you have, and if you've ever felt this way too, if you've ever had this happen to you. And you'll recognize that, we are not alone in this. And then the third aspect is self-kindness. So what do I need to hear right now? And flipping it around a little bit, if a friend came to you and told you what happened, what would you tell them? And so some of the things that you might be saying to yourself are, wow, that really sucked, but I did my best, and I know this is really good stuff, and I'm proud of it. But I need to go on a walk and get a snack. That's self-kindness, and maybe the result of practicing mindfulness, practicing common humanity and kinder self-talk, the ripple effect of this is that you continue to advocate for what's on your roadmap because you worked hard for it and you understand this stuff better than anybody else does. Or you actually decide to give feedback to that person about how they spoke to you. Or you seek support from your other fellow product managers just to, discuss what happened and get connection for that. Or maybe you do nothing and decide that you want to conserve your energy. There's also power in that. What we don't want is to ruminate and spiral over the external validation, and what you did wrong, right? But rather respond in a way that feels true to who you are and what you stand for in a compassionate manner. So what we just went through is something that folks in the mindful self-compassion community called a self-compassion break. And if you can practice just one of these aspects or go through the whole thing, that is a huge step, and that will create the ripple effects that we've been talking about today. So product leadership and how we show up for other people truly depends on how we show up for ourselves, as we've seen, and we've seen the evidence and research back that. Practice mindfulness, remember that you're not alone in feeling this way. And there's nothing wrong with you, but with the systems that we're currently operating within. And When we feel our self-critic come out, what words of encouragement do we need to hear from a good friend? I'm going to say, this stuff is really hard. Okay. This is the long game. This is like a lifetime sport. It really does take practice, but we have to start somewhere small. Y'all showing up to my talk today is a huge step towards that. And I'm super grateful. But this will lead to, starting small. It'll create those ripple effects. You'll start gaining momentum. And as you see more shifts, you'll start getting a little bit more confident about the next step you want to take. And this will lead to bigger leaps, bigger wins. And you'll learn so much about yourself in the process. So by starting with self-compassion, even in the smallest way, not only will you get to know yourself better, but you'll feel a greater sense of support and encouragement to step out of your comfort zone. Product management is really, really hard, and we should name that. Like our field is really difficult, and you can build trust in your team, but you have to build trust in yourself first. You can be authentic, empathetic, and you will be, but you have to be empathetic with yourself first. And you have the power to define what that leadership looks like for you. But you have to start with yourself first, and you'll see that it will create ripple effects in the way that you engage with folks around you. So thank you everybody again for spending your time with me today and attending my talk. I would love to connect after this. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can find some of my content on Medium. And please join me for my interactive session as well. So there are more details in the agenda, but I want to thank you all again, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.